Welcome to Living Your Path. I am Cecile Ferry, a coach and astrologer. I'm here to guide serenity. Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to the podcast this week. It is different from the Coaching Corner because it will be a longer episode. It's a bit of a cornerstone episode today, one that I'm really delighted to bring to you. I have been meaning to talk about this on the podcast for more than a year, and it's happening now. And it is a bit of a new topic. I will probably touch on it more, but it's stuff I have been doing on my own and that I'm bringing to you. And so I'm going to share about some stories that I've been through, and I have something really exciting to release and to launch to you today. So take your time, sit down, whatever you're doing right now, and we are here to talk today about intuition. And I don't know where you're at with that. You may be really early on the journey. You may be really far advanced into it and be like, but of course, Cecile. So wherever you're at, welcome. And I'm sure that I will be able to share something that will help you go further on the journey. So to start on the story, I had zero connection to my intuition for a very, very long time. And I lived my life really well without it. So I thought, right? I grew up in an environment where intuition was not spoken about, was not cultivated. It was very much about being in control and using my left brain and working hard, studying hard, all those things are great, right? But that's not everything in life. So I grew up, and I'm talking up until my pretty much 40s, disconnected from the power of my own intuition. And I was very much a Cartesian, and if I didn't see something, I wouldn't believe in it. And I just never really tuned in, what is called your gut feeling. Not really. Like, I was all in the head, and I was bloody good at being in my head and operating from that place. And I lived a very good life, very successful, well-ordered, organized life. But there is more in store for us than living from the head. And the thing is, for me, whilst I was living that way, I had a very strong interest / fascination for things that didn't fit that model, for things that were obscure, for things that didn't make sense, the magical, the woohoo kind of thing. Not that I really invested any time and did any of that. I remember first time going into the self-help department in a bookstore and thinking, that is a lot of rubbish. Fast forward to today, my bookshelf at home is full of it. So you never know who you really are deep down. But back then, I really did not explore that, but I started doing that, and my entry door to it was manifestation when I was in my late 30s, because I was like, wow, that looks like a very different way. I think a lot of us were on that bandwagon when The Secret was released, and it was like, oh wow, is there another way to live life? So since then, I've been really keen on exploring all those things that are underneath the surface, the things that you don't see or you can't explain with logic. And I'm still on that journey. And that's also why I fell into astrology. All the mystical kind of attracts me. It's not a surprise being a Scorpio rising. Anyway, when did my journey really start? I had been hearing about intuition and your higher self, and it's different from, the ego part of you that gives you that really strong talk in your head. So I knew there were two different voices within me, but it was hard to get out of the inner critic voice, the ego voice that really spoke to me every single day, every minute of the day that I was awake, versus the voice of my higher self. every now and then it will come up and it will whisper something to me. And definitely I remember getting hits over the years to get into coaching. So I think that's the first thing, like even if you're not connected to your intuition, it would have already spoken to you. It's just that you need to start learning how to pay attention to those things and welcome more of them. And that's the point of this podcast, hopefully. So I had been getting hits about personal development, being a coach, coaching. And so I kind of stored them at the back of my head. And eventually, obviously, moved into that place. And it was only a couple of years into my practice that I realized that intuition was a core part of my skill set as a coach. And when I realized, and I started nurturing it and I started trusting it even more, and it's like my magic skill, right? When I am on a call with a client, yes, I have a lot of skills in terms of listening, understanding, but I have a lot of intuition coming into it, and I just know. I know where to go, I know which next question to ask, and I cannot explain that other than with my intuition. So over the years, I started using it in my business. And the point that really started the next level in my intuition journey was when I found a book. So I was on a weekend away by myself, like I do those regular retreats. And I go to this bookstore in a country town in Victoria called Daylesford. I really love it. And it has a lot of the personal development books and astrology and the likes. And it's a bit of a ritual for me when I'm in that place. I stop by that bookstore. And I always kind of just let myself see what is going to guide me. Sometimes it's a crystal, sometimes it's a book. And that day, there was a book on a shelf that really stood out because it was apart from the other books and it was kind of a mini display, and I grabbed it and I just knew. And actually the book is called You Already Know, and it's by Helen Jacobs. So side note, I'm not affiliated with her, but I found that book extremely helpful, and I find it fantastic for anyone who wants to understand intuition and get on the journey. She really talks about the processes and how to do that. So have a look, see if it speaks to you. But let me read to you the first sentence of the book. Why do you think you're here in this very moment reading this book? What if it's not by chance you are reading these words, but because some greater forces conspire to place this message in front of you right now? What if you are here reading this because you already know deep down you're supposed to? So I was reading that and thinking, oh yeah, okay, get it. Like I was meant to find this book and it started everything for me. And maybe you're listening to this podcast and you're feeling exactly the same. You were supposed to listen to this podcast. So that was my intro. Let's get into it further. Okay, so let's talk a bit about what is intuition, and I could spend hours on that, and I won't. And you can find a lot of information online or in books on it. But what I will say, it's not easy to spot your intuition because it's very, very subtle. On the other hand, our ego voice is anything but subtle. So it really overpowers it. And I think also the habit of listening to our thought so much every day, like we think it's our inner voice, really. It's very difficult to hear a second voice, and the intuition's way of speaking to us isn't like straightforward, kind of really direct, and I won't say in your face, mega clear. It's not. It's more like a whisper. I read somewhere, I don't know if it's in that book, that it's like, you know, when you're asleep at night, someone just comes in and drops a little card on your bedside table with a message on it. And I was like, okay. So not easy to hear. And the thing is, when we are not used to hearing it, when we're not connected to it, and we're not used to listen on top of that. So that's one thing to hear, but then you've got to listen and follow through on it. If we're not used to that, we don't hear very well. And it's the other way around. The more we hear it, the clearer it gets and the louder, so to speak, it gets. So it's a matter of starting where you are and then keep trying, because the volume will be dialed up, but it might be really dialed down right now. And that's where I was when I started and I grabbed that book in that bookstore. I had heard some hits here or there, but it was very, very faint. And I think that's okay. And I think that's where it is for a lot of us. But when you start being on that journey and you sort of commit to it and you pay more attention, you will start hearing more and more and more and more. It's a bit like when you have a friend and they give you some advice and you kind of ignore it. After some time, that friend will stop talking to you about those things. So that is the same with your intuition. And really, it's nothing short of miraculous, I find, because it's sort of unexpected what you hear. It sounds weird. It's a bit out of the blue. Sometimes it doesn't really make sense. So it can be all the way too scary. Like, oh no, what the hell? But you get amazing ideas and insights and just like thoughts like, I should go there. I should do this, right? And the thing is, it never lies. That I have learned. But it's not what we want to hear sometimes. But I am learning that it is a very super mega intelligent power. More than us, really. And the good news is we all have intuition inside of us. You, me, everyone you know. No one is born without it. I'm sure of that. We all have it inside of us. And a simple explanation, it's because we're made of a lot of water. The moon is the planet that offers a lot of intuition, and the moon impacts on water. Okay, so basically, as long as there's a moon and we're human beings made of water, we will have intuition, whether we like it or not. But the thing is, some of us have got extra capacity in the intuition department because of their birth chart. And I can answer that for you. If you do a birth chart reading with me, we look for specific placements and signs that really show that that capacity is dialed up for you. But at the beginning, everyone has a baseline level of intuition. Okay? Maybe I do a podcast on that from an astrological point of view. But usually you need to have a professional reading done because it's not always just your sun, moon, and rising sign. It's a lot more complex than that. Anyhow, it turns out I do have some really interesting placement that speak to my intuition level. So now that I know and I'm nurturing it, I am getting like more incredible results with it. So how do you connect to your intuition? Well, the main thing really is having breaks in silence, because you are not going to hear it in the everyday busyness, in the go, 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 where you just back to back, right? And then until you crash at night. It will come through your dreams as well, but some of us don't remember those dreams. So we need to allow space, if you like, for that little messenger to slide us a little DM. That's really how it works. And then we need to notice. We need to kind of listen to our body cues, you know, that gut feel. We can't feel it if we're just not tuning in. And also just like what just seems to come like a simple knowing. And I guarantee you, if you actually just pay attention, you will start noticing things. It doesn't take any specific training or skill set. A child knows this naturally, and then they just say it aloud. They're like, oh, boom, right? But we lose that ability. So we have to remember, and we have to go back to being a child in that regard and just hear the hunches, the whispers. And your intuition will also speak through not just you and your own voice, but through messages around you. And that's what I love, you know, that is the guidance from the universe, from whatever God's source that you trust, that is speaking to you, through you. And it speaks through people around you. It speaks through social media, through books, any communication channels that you are exposed to. And some of us, it's a lot easier to notice in the external communications than it is in our own internal self. Now, over time, I have learned to know who are the specific messengers that I have in my life, because they are specific people. Like with those people, I regularly get messages out of the blue, and they're crazy. Like they're people that I wouldn't even think are relevant in that way. They've got like different roles in my life, some more administrative, let's say, and they just come out with stuff at times that I'm like, boom, this is an intuitive hit for me. So my point is, the universe is always speaking to you, but we don't know, and we're not really paying attention or not really listening. But the minute that you change that and you start listening, or you just like ask to hear, wow, things just start changing, and that volume, it died up, and you start seeing more places where you're getting the intuitive guidance. And that is very cool, my friend. And the intuition will kind of work always to give you similar messages. So you don't always hear it the first time, and you will hear it through another person, and then see a post on it on Instagram. That's how you know when it converges. That is a clear message. And I've paid a lot of attention to that, and that has even guided those podcast episodes, because suddenly I hear about the same topic in different places. And so I've learned to like not doubt it anymore. And that's another big part. It's, you've got to not just listen, but actually follow through and do it and accept and receive it. And that takes practice as well. And trust me, if I can do this, everybody can, because I tend to be the person who's like, no, I'm not trusting anything like that unless it comes from me or I've got like tangible proof. But this is my lesson in this life. And I think all of us right now, with the Virgo, Pisces, nodal axis that we have, it's about trusting. And I think there's no better year to start being like, okay, tell me what I need to be doing, and follow that guidance. Okay, so I'm sort of done talking about intuition and how it works, even though we could keep going there, because I want to share another part of the story. And that's really like what I did with that intuition after I read that book from Helen Jacob, you already know. And I started just practicing that. And guess what? Of course, those intuitive hits just starting to come. And by the way, one of my practice now is I record them. I have a specific place, kind of folder on my phone where I just record those things. And you know what? Sometimes, it's only about capturing those, and you will see if some repeat, and then you don't have to always do something about them straight away. Just let them sit for a while and then just get back to them later on. So I like to just keep like a running list, and then I see what repeats, and then I decide when I engage with them. So one thing that started to happen and to drop for me was around an Oracle cards deck. I really love Oracle cards, and those affirmation cards that you draw. I have a lot of them. I have a lot of those decks. I love them. And the thing is, I was looking for one for me that felt really right. And I was looking and looking in every shop, every market, exhibition that I got to that has those decks. I was flicking through all of them. And I namely went to one in Melbourne with a friend, and I remember opening every single box. And you know what? I could never find one that worked for me. There were so many different ones, and maybe you have your favorite decks as well. But I didn't connect with the visuals, with the design, with the messages. Like, it was never right for me. And I looked everywhere. And I remember telling my friend that day that I just could not find a suitable oracle cards deck. And she laughed and said to me, oh, well, maybe that means you have to create your own. And that was just like, what? No way, right? So that was the first time the intuition hit. And I thought, okay, whatever. No, I don't really like that idea. I'm going to put it to the side. And then I kept looking, and you guessed it, never found anything I liked. And as I was journeying with this intuition, like I really got that inner knowing that it was time for me to create an oracle cards deck. And that literally, this was my first contract with my intuition. It was like, okay, Cecile, you want to trust us? Well, we want you to do this. And that took a lot of like self-acceptance. And I didn't like sign up on it straight away. It took a couple of days, couple of walks, and being like, am I really doing that? Because this is literally in my head. It depends on everyone. For me, I hear it in my head. I hear it. Some people feel it. Some people see images, you know. For me, it's just like something that gets downloaded, more like on the auditory front, but it's in my head. Like I don't hear it as such. Hard to explain. But it's like you're having conversation with it in your head. And I was like, I know I'm being asked to do this, but it took me some time to commit. But I did, okay? Another person who speaks really well about that is Elizabeth Gilbert in her book, Big Magic. Highly recommend that book if you haven't read it. So I was like, okay, I am going to do this. And I had no idea of how to do it. And I was like, okay, well, universe, you're going to have to guide me, because if I'm meant to do this, okay, but I need the guidance. And the universe delivered every single step of the way. So for the little story, I started researching like how to design those things, what they look like online, get some advice like on sizes. I find out what was the standard size of those cards, and then looked into how to produce them, watch a couple of videos, tutorials, and then find a printer. In Australia, there was only one that could do them. And I was like, okay. And then I moved on to, let's do it. Like, I've got to design those things. And I also felt into that, like, should I get someone to do it? Is someone coming up for me? And I actually have a designer in my own family. But I felt like I had to design them myself, because I felt like the vision was in my head and it would be hard to articulate it. And I was just like, no, there was this deep knowing I have to be the one creating those. So I'm like, okay, it looks like I'm signing up for designer as well. And then the next step dropped into my awareness as well, when I was like, okay, where do I start? And I just thought, okay, I'm going to do a mood board, you know? So one night I sit down on Canva and I just start pulling like ideas of colors and visuals and themes, because all of that was literally coming through creative inspiration that I was channeling in. And I was, like downloading what my intuition was saying. And I was trusting the process. And when you do, it's actually quite easy. It's like, okay, what's coming through me? And I just put it together in one evening, and I had this mood board in front of me and I loved it. And I was like, this is my creative vision. Okay. So it was like a roadmap on the symbols and style I was going to use in my deck. And the messages that I am using on the cards, that is the funniest part. So they all came to me, I kid you not, in about 2 minutes as a download from my head. I just grabbed my phone and I wrote every single message as it came to me. I reckon 2 minutes, it was done. And I had 60 and I just stopped at that. So I had the messages on my phone. Then I had the vision board, like if you like the mood board, the brand kind of look. And then the next step dropped into my mind and I was like, oh, I'm going to find images because that's very important. So I worked out that I wanted just a simple message, want a card with a beautiful visual that would align with my creative direction. And it's very much me, my essence, being distilled into those cards. That's why it's hard to explain. But if you've been with me and you can see my branding on my website, on this podcast, you can see my photography, my content online. This is really me. And I decided, that's why I did it myself, that I wanted to infuse those cards with my vision, which is a mix of being feminine. It's quite sophisticated and elegant. It talks about balance. It talks about body and mind. It talks about simplicity, a sense of practicality as well. And beauty, I think, is a big part. The idea of the sea is a big one for me. I love the water. It really resources me. So a lot of those visuals around oceans and water really came through. Right? But it was something anchored in the everyday. I was not interested in anything like fantasy looking or gothic or extremely astrological minded. More like a day-to-day, down-to-earth personality like my brand is. So I look for images and I found them all. And I curated over a couple of days and I've really enjoyed that process and just always use my intuition as the guidance. Like yes or no. That's a yes, that's a no. As I was doing that, I got an idea for another deck of cards. And I was like, oh my God, no. Let's just store that one for later, okay? And then so I had all my images and all my messages and I just married them together on the template. And you guessed it. Everything matched perfectly. It was just like mega easy. It was like drag, drop, done. I wasn't missing one. Everything matched an image. It was incredible how everything fell into place, That's why I just want you to hear this, because when you follow the guidance, things fall into place effortlessly. But it can be hard in terms of what it's asking you to do, because you have to trust and you have to go past your fears. Because I had no idea what I was doing. But I managed to keep going and, not let my head take over going, what are you doing? You know nothing about that. You're going to make a fool of yourself. I didn't listen to any of those voices. I was like, this is an experiment. I'm going to work with my intuition and let's see where it takes me. And then I ended up adding some little symbols on every card that come from the astrological side of me. Just something really subtle, but each card has a very different symbol. They're all unique. And then I just spent a lot of time tidying up and finishing the artwork. I designed the back of the card to be exactly something that I personally loved. And then I moved to doing the box artwork. And that, my friend, was hell for me because I am not a professional designer. The printer sent me this complex file with lots of dimensions and layers. And I had to follow that. And trust me, I wanted to give up at that stage many times. It pushed me like you wouldn't believe. But I did rise to the challenge, and because I had gone so far that I was like, I've got to keep doing this. So I did the back of the box. That was reasonably okay. And then I massively struggled with the front of the box. But I just kept at it. And that's why it took me longer. And I just, kept trying and kept showing up for it. And then I did a prototype. And I had to go back and forth, did a couple of those because they were not right initially and I kept tweaking. And it was just testing me every step of the way. Even to the end, once I actually made my card thicker, so then the size of the box had to change and the printer said I had to redo my whole artwork file. And I was like, oh my God, no, you're kidding me. I cannot do this. I'm not a professional designer. At which point they stepped up and helped me and did the new file for me, just adjusting it all. And then I did another prototype and it was fine. And I signed off on the first order. because the whole time I just kept my eyes on the prize. Like, I want to see this thing in the 3D world because it comes from my head and my intuition. And I want to show and prove to myself that I can create following my intuition. So I'm like, okay, keep going, So it's important to have that goal in mind. And I cannot tell you the joy that I had when I received the first box of them and I opened them up at home. I'll probably share that video in socials later, but it was just like, oh my God, I did this. And that is kind of the conclusion of my story. I went through all the details, but it's to show you, like, I am not a designer. I am not a creative professional person. I had zero idea at the beginning how to do this. And I did it. I am holding that deck of cards in my hand and I absolutely love it. So that is to say that your intuition is so powerful. There are gifts inside of you that your intuition wants to bring to life, wants to turn into things in this world that people want and need. And unless you say, okay, I'm going to do it, otherwise those things will never see the light of the day. And you will leave this planet with all those gifts inside of you. And your intuition keeps whispering, come on, do it. And so if I can do it, if I could be open to the guidance, so can you. And it guided me through every step. And I can't even believe I've got the finished products in my hand. And so I wanted to use this podcast to launch this deck of cards into the world officially. I'm holding it, to be honest, not because I designed it. They are really beautiful cards. I have been already sending them to quite a few people and received amazing feedback. They are different from what's out there. So the cards are quite simple. They're quite thick because I really wanted a premium finish. And they've got very simple, short messages on them with a little sentence underneath that really gives you simple guidance. So I use them myself. I draw a card every week at the beginning of the week and I look at it on my desk. It's there for the whole week it's my north node really for the week. It's that message. When I'm really stuck with a decision and I need guidance, I pull another card. What I also do is at the beginning of the year, the calendar year, I draw a card for each month. And I have been doing that for the last 2 years, and I could map the card message with what actually ended up happening that month. So it's a really cool exercise to do. Maybe I'll share on that for January 2026 when we get to that. But I just wanted to talk about those cards now because I am now putting them for sale on my website. So I highly encourage you, if you feel called, to go and check out my deck of cards on my website. You've got some photos, some images of the cards themselves. And it's a perfect time in the lead up to Christmas if you're looking for gifts that are special, that are different and meaningful. I highly recommend that. I currently ship into Australia, and if you want them to be shipped overseas, I'm happy to do so as well. Send me an email on that. But the cards are available on my website, cecileferry.com, and I'll put the link in the show notes as well. So thank you, my friends, for being here, for listening to this story about intuition, and I hope it has massively inspired you to stop and pause and notice the little subtle hints that you're getting in your life and to start following those crumbs, because you never know where they could take you, and there is beauty at the end of the journey. And it's just also so powerful for yourself when you see what you're capable of doing. It's a really nice feeling. So I hope you will check them out. I hope you will get some for yourself or for your close friend, and that you really enjoy the guidance and the beauty of those cards, and that they will help you in your life. So take care, everyone. I really appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Have a beautiful rest of the week, and I will speak with you next week. Bye, everyone.